We are back. How you doing? I'm Leslie Marshall. Andy Ferris joins us. He's an animal care specialist for marine mammals at the Brookfield Zoo in Chicago, Illinois. If you're in the Chicago area, the wide area surrounding Chicago as well, or if you visit that city, do not miss the Brookfield Zoo. They're awesome, and certainly the marine mammals there are as well. He's been there full time at the zoo for 31 years. He's a member of the bargaining committee for Teamsters Local 727. Now, for more than 100 years, can you imagine, Teamsters Local 727 has represented the hardworking men and women of the greater Chicago area. They currently represent nearly 10,000 members across a multitude of industries, from bus drivers to trade show workers, pharmacists to zookeepers, funeral directors to parking industry workers, and more. Their top priority is serving the needs of their members, and they firmly believe that a united union is a strong union. Andy, thank you for joining us. Welcome, and we appreciate you being on this Friday. I know you're busy. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you, Leslie. Thank you for having me.
Well, let's talk about the contract fight, the fight for fair wages, the fight that keeps going on. You've been at the Brookfield Zoo for more than 30 years. That is
Yes, I
just
have a
amazing. And
long time.
yeah, but it's a
Yes.
testament to you, and you obviously love your job and what you do, and know that what you do makes, a difference. It does to me, like we were talking off the air. I'm a huge animal and mammal fan, and so glad to have you with us today. So you've been there more than 30 years. And what's happening right now between workers and management? Because you certainly have a different view than somebody who's just been there a little bit.
Yeah. Thanks for asking. So, unfortunately, there's just a really big disconnect between the members, the Teamster members, and the hardworking people that make the zoo run, that take care of the animals, that take care of the grounds, that take care of all of the buildings, all of those essential things that we need to run the zoo. There's a big disconnect between these hardworking people and management. All we really want is pretty much what everyone else wants. Is we want a fair wage. We want, affordable health care. That's a really big issue. And we want to work in a safe and pleasant environment, making sure that we have the tools and the people necessary to give the animals the best possible care that we can. That's always been our goal. And of course, I can speak as we're called animal care specialists. We're known as keepers. It doesn't really matter what you want to call me, but or dolphin trainers or whatever. But we're all committed here. That's why we work at the zoo, and so we're just trying to do the best we can. But we need to. But we also want to, have a home, have a family, be able to go on vacation maybe once in a while. So all these things are in jeopardy right now with the current negotiations happening.
Absolutely. Well, you and your coworkers are fighting for things like you said. You talked about fair wages. You talked about safety. You talked about healthcare. I would imagine there's also staffing. So let's get down to some of that. It's not just reducing your pay, but it's reducing the numbers. It's reducing the number of people that are working, not just in your position, but below you and around you. So that means instead of doing your job, you're doing the job of two or three people for less money. And you're saying, hey, I want more money just to do my job. Plus, I'm doing these other jobs. So you're asking for more money, but you're also saying, look, we also need more staff as well. True, true.
Absolutely, that's absolutely true. And I would say for many of us, wages is of course important. Healthcare is very important, but I think for many of us, staffing is almost just as important as well. Over the life of this contract, we have lost several positions over the last few years, and we've actually opened exhibits. We had this tropic forests new exhibit open. It's great. It's awesome. We're all for that, but we opened a brand new exhibit. We added animals to the collection, and we didn't really add staff. So that all falls on those, dedicated animal care staff to try and do the best that they can. And we want to make sure that we're all working in a safe manner around these animals. These are animals that require, a lot of expertise and understanding of how to be safe around them and how to work with them.
Well, and obviously it will trickle down to hurting the animals if you have one person doing three jobs and, or people quit because they're like, oh, wait a minute, I can't do the job of two or three people for this little amount of money when, I haven't had a raise in, how long? Healthcare. Let's touch upon that. This is something that right now there is an emergency, if you will, when it comes to healthcare, because the cost of healthcare are right now rising. It's just exorbitant. And even
Mhm. Absolutely.
look, I'm very blessed. I'm married to a surgeon. With what I do, I am not living paycheck to paycheck, and my kids and I are covered under his company, but our insurance went up over $1,000 a month for four people, and and that hurts. And I'm not a family working two or three jobs to get by, and some families are. So healthcare, what you're asking for isn't something that a company A should not offer, isn't already offering. But when those costs out of pocket continue to go up and they're not lifting your wages, something's going to give. What's going to give? People are going to quit their job and just say, I got to go work somewhere else. That doesn't help the corporation either.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. You're exactly right, Leslie. We all know that the cost of healthcare has gone up and up and up. And the latest proposal doesn't address the continuing our Teamster benefits that we're now enjoying. Right now, it's 100% employer funded, and of course, it is really good insurance. I'm happy to say that when now with the insurance I have, I go to my doctor and they always say, "Oh, this is good insurance," But this last offer puts all of that in jeopardy, which means,
And
even if they were
I'm
to give,
sorry to jump in with you here,
yeah.
because that's what I wanted to ask. So people listening, people watching, what has changed that make these issues come to a head now?
Okay, so like you explained very well, the cost of healthcare goes up and up and up, right? So for the last contract, which we negotiated 4 years ago, the Teamsters said, okay, healthcare is going to cost this much, and the Teamsters has done their part and paid those premiums, and the zoo as well. But healthcare goes up. So
Right.
now we're coming to the table again, and we have to say, you know what? Healthcare doesn't cost what it cost 4 years ago. Nobody would even imagine that it would. These are the costs now that it costs, and you know our health insurance it's not a profit oriented one. It's through the union. Again, it's really good insurance. So they're but the zoo is saying, well, we don't want to pay that difference that now what it used to cost to what it costs now, almost like saying, well, you know what? You can't go to the gas station and say, well, I only want to pay $3 a gallon of
Yeah.
gas. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it is that the cost is what it is, and we need to pay it.
Yeah, one thing that really stood out to me is that workers, you guys were offered less than 4% raises, but the
Yeah.
CEO's compensation increased by over 70. That's 70%. So from your perspective, what message does that send to the people doing the day-to-day work who make that 70% and make those CEOs rich, make that possible?
Yeah, absolutely. That just shows us that that's a really big disconnect between, it's okay for
If
them
that
to
isn't a
make.
great example of income inequality, I don't know what is, right?
Exactly. Yeah. They're okay giving themselves those raises and making that amount of money while denying us a fair wage. I mean, I can tell you that the people in my profession, none of us are getting rich. None of us have second vacation homes, anywhere. Really, again, we want what most people want. Part of the American dream. We want to have a family if that's your thing. You want to have a home, you want to be able to pay your bills and maybe do a few things on the side, just a fair wage. So what we're asking is nowhere
You're not
near.
asking for a vacation home. You're asking for enough money to go away for maybe a week vacation.
It is nowhere near a 70% raise,
Right.
and if you look at what we got last time, we're actually behind the game based on inflation. We've kind of gone back a little bit. We got a decent raise that first year and then okay raises the subsequent years. So now it's time to play catch up. We need a little bit more to catch up with what's happening in the world.
Yeah, and like you said, you're fighting it, on both ends in a sense, because you mentioned that the potential loss of the fully employer paid healthcare that could not come at a worse time. So all of this in like less than a minute before our break. Um,
Okay.
How big of a deal is that for workers and their families? When you add all this together, I would imagine it's extremely stressful.
It is. It's really stressful. Again, we, here, us at the zoo, the frontline staff, they care. They really care. And I'm not just, I'm an animal care specialist, so I'm an animal care, but, I would say the same things about all my union brothers at the zoo. They care about the institution. They care about keeping the lights on, keeping everything working, keeping it beautiful, keeping it a great experience. And we're trying to do this, but with less and less resources. And then they're offering not even cost of living what averages
Right,
out to be.
right.
So it's really insulting, especially like you mentioned, when our CEO got a 70% raise.
Right. And what it translates into is you don't care about us, sir. Right?
Yes.
That's pretty
Yeah.
horrible. Yeah, we're going to take a break. We will be back. We will be back with Andy Ferris, animal care specialist for marine mammals at the Brookfield Zoo in Chicago, Illinois, a member of the bargaining committee for Teamsters Local 727. Back with him, back with you right after this. We are back with animal care specialist for marine mammals at the Brookfield Zoo in Chicago, Andy Ferris. He is a member of the bargaining committee for Teamsters Local 727, and they're simply asking for their fair share, a living wage, health care, staffing, and safety. Andy, thank you for helping, joining us and helping with this and the committee and doing all that you do at the zoo with the animals, caring for them. Um, you know, there are concerns among a lot of people listening and watching. And, when people hear possible strike at a zoo, of course, their first concern is not for the people, it's right for the animals. So,
Right.
can you
Exactly.
tell listeners about how the animals would be cared for if that ends up happening, if there ends up being a strike, if there's a work stoppage?
Yeah, exactly. And if I was not working at the zoo, it'd be my first question. So what happens to the animals there? So that's what makes us sort of unique in that we're not, we don't make anything, but the only thing that we create is perhaps goodwill towards the environment. So there is built into our contract a contingency plan. So if we were to strike, the animals would receive the care that they need. And we have actually been in discussions about what that would look like, what we would need, scheduling, that sort of thing. So that won't go away. So again, when I say, I think I can speak for most of my animal care care team members is that, we're in this because we care about the animals. And for many of us, like I have an animal, I have a dolphin that I've known for 27 years. I've known her, and, just like many of us get attached to the animals in our lives, we really do get
You've been
attached.
there over 30 years. You've known her for 27. She's like a coworker. She's your work wife.
She kind of is. Yes, 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 yes. Yeah, exactly. She's the one of the other loves in my life, but my
Right. So
wife knows about it.
what you're saying is this is not a decision that comes easy. This isn't something that, you guys like threaten, if you will. It's not taken lightly. You're very concerned about these animals and you don't want to strike. You're like, look, let's just meet at the bargaining table and come up with a deal that works for everybody. Because what you guys are asking for is not unreasonable at all. You're asking for a cost of living adjustment that's commensurate with the, cost of living adjustment. You're just saying, please, could you protect our health care that you have been wonderfully providing with a wonderful plan? We're not asking for the kind of raises you're getting. And, we, like you said, we just want a living wage so that we can feed our families, we can have a roof over our head, be a homeowner, and maybe go on vacation once a year. And we'll still work hard to support your numerous beach houses with that 70% raise. And can we have some more staff? And we want to be safe because if we're safe, the animals are safe and safer. Doesn't sound like, if I were running it, I would give you what you
Absolutely.
want because not only am I going to make money off of it, but, if I were a CEO, but it's really bad press and lawsuits if employees get hurt or die. And when
Yes,
dolphins who've been there 27 years get hurt or die, right? What's her name?
absolutely.
What's her name?
Chapico.
Topeka.
She's our
Um,
oldest female dolphin. So not our
well,
oldest dolphin, but she's our
how,
oldest female.
how long is the average lifespan of a dolphin?
Well, depending on who they say the average age is between 25 and 35, but just like some people lived into their
Yeah.
90s or 100. So,
Did they live
she's 40.
longer in captivity?
Typically most animals live longer in captivity because they have all their health
Super.
care taken care of. They get, 5 or 6 square meals a day, whatever it takes, and lots of attention from us. And of course, a
And they
protected
don't have a
environment.
union supporting them. They have all
They
the
don't. Yeah, they
That's
need
what
it.
we
They
need,
need it.
the
Yeah,
Dolphin division of the Teamsters Union.
yeah,
So
yeah.
you've also said that there are already staffing shortages. We touched upon this. Those
Yes.
staffing shortages, what we didn't talk about, we talked about how it can burden another individual's workload. It can hurt, the animals or, not need to neglect. But I mean, there's only so much a person can spread themselves around if they're doing 2 or 3 jobs. How can it impact safety?
Well, so a lot of
I
times,
mean,
so
so for example, what does it look like day to day for both workers and the animals with these shortages?
So again, with shorter staff, some animals require, 2 people, because of the nature of, they work with dangerous animals and they require 2 people to make sure that there's a safe system in place. I mean, we have venomous animals. One of the members on our team, she works with venomous animals all the time, but there's a great protocol and safety things, but it requires more staff to be able to service those animals, to take care of those animals, to be able to do that in a safe manner, in the safest manner possible, which is, of course, what we want. So,
You would have been liked our dinner table conversation last night. We were
yeah.
talking about that spotted octopus, who's one of the most lethal in the sea
Oh, the
world.
blue ring octopus. Yes,
Yes, we
yes.
were talking about, and the
I've
fact
heard
that
of
my
them.
son knew the answer meant he paid attention in his oceanography class, so we were thrilled.
Oh,
Um,
good.
Management has suggested that higher wages could lead to higher ticket prices, but you guys say that is just a scare tactic. Why do you see it that way?
Yeah, that's really disingenuous, and unfortunately, I really don't like hearing that, because it presents this false dichotomy. That's not how it works. The zoo has all sorts of funding, that they get money from. So I think you know, they're trying to make it look like, again, somebody would have to choose between going to the zoo or me not getting the wages that I deserve. And it's not as simple as that. There is a big pile of money. It's all about prioritizing where this money goes. And unfortunately, we've seen some of the priorities, and we don't, membership does not agree with that. So all we're asking for is our fair share of wages, and continue our health insurance, and make sure that we have enough staff to do our job well, and safety, and none of that is unreasonable.
We
Um,
talked about healthcare and how it's rising right now, but one thing we didn't talk about, Chicago, I shared with you off the air. I lived there 4 times, absolutely love the city. I lived in the city. The first time I lived on Lakeshore Drive between Belmont and Addison, next to the big
oh,
synagogue
fun.
on the edge of Boys Town. I also lived
Awesome.
what's called, some people know, Chicagoans know it's called Streeterville. Some people refer to it as Navy Pier. I lived there when those apartment buildings were just coming up. Now, they've been there a while. That's more of an
Yeah.
established neighborhood now. A wonderful city, but Chicago is not a low cost, cheap place to live. So, what
No.
are workers and families like yours actually dealing with when it comes to the cost of living right now?
Absolutely. We're just trying to keep up with the cost of living. Like I mentioned before, our wages have not, kept up with that. And I think they've thrown out some numbers about how we're in the top 25th percentile for wages for, zoo personnel. But, that's a national average. So you're comparing, people's salaries that live in rural areas, or, in other areas that aren't nearly as expensive as Chicago, as you mentioned. It is a fairly expensive place to live, and something that we all have to deal with.
Yes,
But
and
it's our
and and
home, and we love it.
yeah, totally. You can't. It's comparing apples and oranges. Look, I live in California,
Yeah,
and when other people say California, I'm like, look, we have the world's what now, fourth largest economy. We have the you can't. When people say, but in Florida, I'm like, Florida is half the size of California, population wise. You can't. So to your point, when you have a zoo in a major city that is expensive to live in, Chicago's what, the third largest city in the United States, you
yeah,
have more traffic coming in, right? And so
yes,
that means more people are buying tickets, to your point. So
Yeah,
there's more money in the pot to be distributed, one. But two, when you have more people coming in, that means there's more grounds, more that need to be cared for, repaired. There's more, you need more staff to take care of more people coming in.
right.
So, in a sense, when they throw that argument out, not only to me, that kind of blows up in their face, simply because if you want to go, hey, you want to compare, let's compare
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
when you
Yeah,
get down to numbers. And it doesn't
exactly.
cost, like you say, like in rural Alabama, you don't, you also at a place like your zoo, you have a lot more animals than you do in a smaller zoo in a rural area.
Absolutely, yeah. And some of those animals require, a higher level of care.
Right.
Like the animals in my area are very high maintenance animals, and we know that. And but we're giving them the care that they need. They're highly intelligent, and so again, yeah, we're just trying to make sure that the zoo is listening to us, and we've been saying, hey, we need more staff, and it seems to be falling on deaf ears, which is really unfortunate, and it's really coming to bear during these negotiations that they're kind of digging their heels in and just really choosing not to listen to their frontline staff. And we are the people that are there every day, who know these animals, who care for these animals, and understand what it takes to care for them.
Yeah, in a place like the Brookfield Zoo in Chicago, you have a marine mammal center. You don't have that in a small place in a rural area.
Right.
And you also get to see animals that you don't get to see in some of these smaller zoos because of that money and because of that staff and because of that care. And I'm not just saying that because you're here to blow smoke. Brookfield Zoo is actually one of the best. And I've lived all over the United States. I'm an animal person. I love to go visit zoos throughout the country and the world. I've actually been.
I'm so happy to hear that.
No, I really am. And Brookfield Zoo, no joke, is one of the best zoos in the United States, without
Thank you for
question.
saying. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, we pride
yeah,
ourselves. It is a
yeah,
great place to go.
hands down. It's up there with San Diego, and there's
Mhm.
another. They want to compare budgets and what they pay, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us. I want to share with everybody that if you want to check out the website, go to teamsterslocal727.org. You can find out more about this great group of people and what they're fighting for. Teamsterslocal727.org. And please follow them on X. Their handle is @Teamsters727. Once again, you've been listening and watching Andy Ferris, animal care specialist for marine mammals at the Brookfield Zoo in Chicago. And if you are in Chicago, maybe you've lived in Chicago. I know some people go to the Lincoln Park Zoo, but it's like there's 5 animals there. That's not a zoo. That's like a side attraction when you're walking through the park in Lincoln Park. But if you want to go to the real zoo of Chicago, that's Brookfield Zoo, and it's a really awesome zoo. I honestly mean that from the bottom of my heart. Andy Ferris, thank you for joining us. Teamsters Local 727, member of the bargaining committee and animal care specialist for marine mammals at the zoo. Once again, check out the website teamsterslocal727.org, and on X, follow them at Teamsters727. Thank you for joining us, Andy.
Oh, thank you, Leslie. Really appreciate you allowing us to talk.